This episode of Skirmish Supremacy is brought to you again by Death Ray Designs and Black Site X, their Kickstarter that is on right now. As of today, it is 3/10. There is 3 days left. They are just shy of 25,000. They have already funded, but every little bit that you can give them will help. Anything at all that you can put in there, they're going to be unlocking some new stretch goals soon. And then after this is done, they will be selling into your local retail store and in distribution, so you can find them after this is all said and done. Again, you can check out their website at deathraydesigns.com. Otherwise, go to Kickstarter and type in Black Site X to see what they've got going on for you right now. All their new hotness will be up, and I can tell you personally, there are a couple of new kits that will be coming out very, very soon. Can't tell you what they are. That's my little secret. You'll just have to wait, damn it.
Don't take your top off.
Oh, too bad. That my top's coming off. All right, and on that note, everybody, we are live. We are here again. Nick, my wonderful co-host, is joining me. Today we're actually using Google Hangouts. We're going to see how this works compared to the Skype that we've been using in the past. And today we are here with Sean Sutter of Metal King Studios. He actually has a game out on Kickstarter right now that is successfully funded called RelicBlade. Sean, you have done illustration and things of that in the past, so what brought you into designing RelicBlade?
Well, so like you said, I'm an illustrator. I draw comic books for a living, but man, like I've been into tabletop games and specifically miniatures games all along, and probably been more excited about miniatures games than I was ever excited about comics. But I wasn't crazy about the idea of moving to England to try and get this pipe dream job with Games Workshop, because when I was a kid, that was it. Like, if you wanted to work in miniatures, you could work for Games Workshop or be the Perry Brothers, you know? So,
yeah.
So I don't know, it occurred to me, like, back in 2010 that it might be possible to do it on my own. And so since then, I've just been working really, really hard on the requisite skills needed. So, yeah, I went back to school and I got my degree in fine art and tried to become a better artist, tried to do all that stuff, and then taught myself sculpting, and I've been avidly eating games so that I could make a game. And so, like, that was it. I just decided that because I'm crazy about miniatures games, I might as well be making miniatures games.
Nice. Well, it's a good transition. So You went back to school to learn sculpting, so are you handling 100% of everything that's going on in this project? The illustration, the rules, sculpting, you're handling it all?
Yeah, I did. I'm doing everything, and it sounds weird. It's not really it sounds like something you would say to brag, but that's not the reason I do everything.
I was going to call
the reason I do everything is because like I love every part of it. You know, I love drawing, and I love sculpting, and I love making games and writing rules and getting people together to play. And so it's pretty natural for me to do all that stuff. If I do hire someone, or partner with someone, it'll definitely be for marketing and distribution, because it turns out maybe I need help with that. But otherwise, yeah, I'm really crazy about it. And I actually got my degree in 2D art, and then taught myself sculpting after I had graduated. And so I'm all self-taught on ZBrush.
Oh, wow. So nice. This is just sheer grit for you. It's not so much like a fine art. Well, you had fine art training, but you didn't really have like a sculpting background to know how to do it. So you're just like, screw it, I'm going to do it.
Right. Yeah. I because I had imagined that I would end up doing illustration and character design for a game, and then hire out sculptors. Because, I mean, that's a natural structure, a normal structure. But, you know, I didn't have a bunch of money, and I felt funny about the way like I didn't want to go to Kickstarter asking for money for concept art. I wanted to have sculpts and stuff, so I decided to just try. And I feel like once I got into ZBrush, I realized that all along, through all of my art discipline, I've thought about what I'm creating in 3 dimensions and then translated it into 2 dimensions. So anytime I'm drawing, I imagine a 3-dimensional character and then translate it into a 2-dimensional drawing. So when I started sculpting, the technical skills and like learning that was one thing, but as far as the art end, like, man, I stopped having to translate. I could just like put my imagination directly into the computer, and it's a dream come true. It's the best like fulfillment of my imagination in art to be able to make a 3D thing that's exactly as I imagined it.
Yeah, that's got to be something cool, especially coming from a 2D background, and just take it that next step and go right into the, you're holding a version of something that you normally would have just drawn in your hands.
Yeah.
So I could see that.
Yeah, and 2D thing is always going to be a little ambiguous, but holding the 3D model and like actually handling it, like once I got the first like solid casts of my first model, I was like, oh man, this is so great. Like it's really here. It's really 3D, and like painting it and all that stuff is a dream come true for sure.
That's when you're like, I made it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about RelicBlade?
Oh, so RelicBlade is a small scale. Like it's 30 millimeter, but you only use a few models, so it's a small skirmish tabletop game, and it's kind of a hybrid between D&D and X-Wing, maybe, I guess would be a good way to describe it, where you can control a party of heroes, and you use character cards and upgrades to customize them and specialize them, and then another player commands a party of monsters, and they also use character cards and upgrades. So there's parity in points, and then you fight over an unidentified magic item. So you set up the scenario around an item that everyone was drawn to this spot to fight over, but they don't know what it is. So the first character to claim it draws a card from a deck and gets that magic item, and it's a super powerful upgrade. So yeah, it's like really dynamic, and I wanted to really focus on capturing all of the excitement and feeling of like being in command and control of your character of an RPG. Like when you play D&D, you feel like you're really responsible for what the barbarian is doing. I don't know, like I feel like you're in control of things more when you play that. And in a war game, you're a commander, like sending armies out to do things. So I wanted to meet in the middle where you'd be a commander and that you'd have a whole party of heroes, but you'd be able to really control how the characters are behaving. So there's an action dice system where you get a certain number of dice you can use. And so an attack that takes 1 die will have a difficulty value, and you can add extra dice from your pool to make it more likely you'll succeed, or spend those dice for movement. So it's really dynamic and fluid, and you feel like you get stuck in these situations where you really have to think about how you want to use your activations and in what order to really get the best results. And so it's really a lot of fun, super dynamic, and yeah, I mean, it also, at its core, was designed to remove a lot of the barriers that people face when they're thinking about getting into miniatures games. Because, as you guys know, the games can be really too expensive to be friendly for players.
Yeah.
The games can take too long to be friendly for players. Like most adults can't spend 8 hours playing a game. And you need a giant area too. So I mean, I live in an apartment, so having a 6 foot by 4 foot table is kind of an issue. So, or taking up a whole garage for it. So I wanted to address those things to invite people to get into miniaturing by having small armies. So you can paint up 3 to 5 characters and have a full-size army. The play area is only 2 by 2, so you can really manage that on any table. And the games only last between a half hour and 45 minutes. And I've been saying 45 minutes because, like, sure, like sometimes things get longer, but if you watch like battle reports on YouTube, you'll see that the whole thing with intro and people post-game talking about the game, like playtime's about 30 minutes. 37 minutes I think is probably the average. So the games are really quick, and you gotta have like a really exciting, dangerous encounter, adventure battle in a short amount of time with your friends that you didn't have to get out like a whole carrying case of miniatures to play, and you didn't have to plan for when you didn't have to get out a schedule book and figure out what weekend you were going to plan and dedicate to wargaming. So those elements about it really, I think, make it a unique and excellent miniatures game.
Cool. So you decided to make it more compact and quicker playing, so that way you can move through it faster. So, you were saying that you're controlling a party. So is it kind of your typical like D&D adventuring party, like 4 to 5 miniatures per side? The bad guys might have a couple more based upon what they're playing. Does that sound about right? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, certainly. And right now the game is more of a like deathmatch. So there isn't a campaign structure where you use your party and gain experience and stuff. It's more like thematically about the moment where these heroes are meeting their fate. This is the climax battle where the knight that's been gone through who knows what to get here is finally going to get crushed and eaten by a monster. Like in D&D, characters operate under this pretense where like plot keeps them alive to a degree. It sort of sucks to have friends die, and so there's a little bit of a safety net there. In this, like, heroes have no safety net. Like, they will get their face gored off, and that's it. Like, so I don't know. It's a lot of fast, exciting games, but the heroes, depending on how you do upgrades, will probably be between 3 and 4 characters.
Okay.
And the bad guys, depending on upgrades, will be between 5 and 6. But that's just with the current builds. There will be larger monsters that will take higher points costs, and you'll be able to really tailor what kind of like super dangerous encounter you want to play out and have fun with.
So there's a point structure, but at the same time, you're almost kind of entering a verbal contract with your opponent to say, like, look, we're playing 100 points. I don't know what your point structure is at this point.
No,
but,
it's balanced at 100 points. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm psychic, apparently. No, but so you almost have like that verbal contract with your opponent, where that your opponent might bring to the table like 100-point dragon, where it's like, I'm just going to play this giant dragon. Do your best to live.
Yeah. That theoretically, in the future, when a dragon comes out, that will be the case.
Okay, cool.
I'll probably build it more around a scenario at that point where it will be like have a real cool boss fight mission type. But yeah, that's the idea. That if it were D&D, the DM would be like, oh, I'm going to put together a deadly encounter where the heroes will probably die, right?
Right.
And the heroes are like, well, I'm going to take this spell, I'm going to prepare this spell for the day, and I'm going to buy 2 health potions, and I'm going to go in, and I'm going to hire a thief to come with me, And so you use your points that way to try and maximize the way you're fighting. But really, the bad guys tend to tactically work a little bit more like an army, so you'll get more of a feel of playing a miniatures war game. Whereas when you're playing as the heroes, it's going to have more of the feel of a like tank DPS healer trying to stay alive against overwhelming odds. So it's pretty cool, and I think it worked really well. Now that the game is done, when I get to play it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I set out to make. This is so great. So.
Right. So, speaking of the hero side of things, you were mentioning how like you want it to be like your classic D&D party. So, if people are playing the game, do they have to have the tank? Do they have to have the healer? Do they have to have the DPS? Or can they go like 3 tanks and a healer, or a combination in between?
Right. So right now, the characters that exist for the heroes are a questing knight, and so he could be spec'd a tank or DPS.
Okay.
And there is a cleric that can spec healer or DPS. And there's that can be spec'd as DPS bear, because she has the bear form, DPS caster, or as a healer.
Okay.
So right now I was careful to make sure. Oh, and the knight also can take plenty of potions too, so he can be pouring potions on himself the whole time. But I was careful to make sure that I wasn't cornering people and being like, well, there's a priestess and there's a fighter and and a armored dwarf. Trying to make sure that instead I had 3 hybrid classes to start with.
Okay.
So that players would really get to play with how they do their builds and specializations. In the future, I bet there will be characters that will be they'll be DPS or they'll be a tank. But right now, everyone's a hybrid, basically.
Cool. So they still kind of have that classic feeling of like, the fighter is the dude with the sword. But you can build him a couple of different ways to customize how he plays. But he's still a dude with the sword.
With the knight in particular, there are 3 tactics I think he can take. And one of them is more defensive. One of them makes him more of a leader. And then one of them makes him just have like another attack that makes him more of a fighter. And so you can really specialize your knights that way. And I mean, a 3-knight party build is super powerful because they're knights,
Yeah. Gotcha. So, I haven't had a chance to really look at the rules too much yet. It's just my week has been crazy.
Trust me, I know. I shouldn't even sleep. I've got enough to do.
Yeah, well, I did see that you have successfully funded and blown your funding a good portion out of the water for basically being a one-man project. So, kudos on that. So tell us a little bit about the rules. Like, how did you go about designing the game? How did the rules come into play?
Well, I was trying to figure out the best way to make playing a game with only 3 models extremely fun. So like really trying to figure out the right balance of detail versus war game playability.
Sure.
So obviously, if every character had character sheets like a D&D thing, it would be too confusing to keep track of 4 full character sheets. But if they have simple stat lines, then it's not going to engage your imagination. Maybe if you're putting a lot of thought into it, you'll be like, oh, weapon skill 5 guy. Well, man, he's been training really hard. So I wanted to make a good balance there. So I made character sheets into character cards with the stats, and then made sure that each character had plenty of unique abilities that they can do. But the action point system with the action dice, I forget. I guess the origins of it might go back to with War Machine. You know how Warcasters. I don't know if you've played War Machine. Warcasters start with a certain amount of focus, and then they spend that focus like mana to perform some of their spells, but they can't cast all their spells with it usually. And so I really liked that. I was like, man, this is really fun. I love playing as a Warcaster. Why isn't everyone a Warcaster? So I made action dice where actions that take longer require more dice. Actions that are more difficult require a higher value on the dice. And each time you move, you expend a die. So So a character can, with 4 action die, so an average human has 4 actions, and is speed 3. So that means if you spend all of your dice to move, you can move 12 inches. If you do all your attacks, you can focus on them, use more dice to try and make sure you hit, and all of that stuff. But, I mean, as a game designer, it really came down to putting forth an idea and then finding out what was wrong with it and then answering those questions. And then answering those questions and finding out what was wrong and like what loopholes were there and trying to answer those questions. And so I think the rule set I made is really quite simple but really robust. So it's based on time. Actions take time and they're difficult. So walking is not difficult, but it takes time, so you spend a die on it. Doing a complex, powerful attack or like a big nuke spell, that can take almost all of your dice and be quite difficult. So on that principle, I was able to make a really interesting core to the game mechanics. And then each character, I get to write new rules on each of their cards and get to like expand and imagine and interpret those abilities within that context. So it's really super fun.
Cool. So using the dice in that way, I see where that would make a lot of sense. That way you don't just have like somebody walking around like 4 actions basically slinging grenades everywhere around the board.
Yeah, and so it also means that a knight that didn't have to run across the battlefield to go and fight the pigs, if he's already in combat, he has all 4 of his dice to spend on high-value attacks. So it changes that shift where in some games, if you're already engaged, you lose movement. Like you just don't move, you go straight to assault.
Right.
And but that never made sense to me. I was like, man, running takes time. Isn't each round an amount of time? So maybe that was my like playing RPGs as a kid, where I was like, each round is 6 seconds, and what you can do in 6 seconds is how many actions you get. Like, so on that idea, I was like, wow, a knight that didn't run across a field is going to be able to do a lot of great stuff with the longsword. Yeah. But I also designed it so that you can only do each action once. So that doesn't mean he gets 4 high-value attacks. It means that he has to carefully choose how he's going to use the attacks and how he's going to spend his dice to boost those attacks.
Gotcha. So he could, I guess for lack of better terms, he can focus with the dice, so he could roll 2 dice on an attack if he
it's that's actually the rule. You guessed it again. The rule is called focus, and that's where you add an extra die to the attack.
Well, apparently,
and that's
an
really action. So you can only do it once, but yeah, that's how it would work. Like a high value attack that's like really strong, you would add a 3rd die or a 2nd die to the attempt, and spend most of your activation really waiting for the opening and then striking with it. Cool. And it won't make it do more damage, but it makes it more likely that it'll hit. So you can skew the hit stats, but the damage stats are more set.
Right, or you could just throw caution to the wind and just roll all 4 dice on attack and hope you roll really well.
Right, so that would be like, you'll often have the chance to make more attacks, but less likely that they'll hit. So you'll be able to try to get a bunch of 4-ups because that's what you need to win the game. Otherwise, you can roll 2 dice and try and get 4 better on 2 dice, which is like a 90% likelihood.
Right. So, you have a much better chance at that point. Yeah. Awesome. So you were saying that right now the game itself isn't so much built around scenarios. It's about grabbing the relic or grabbing the magical item on the board.
Yeah.
So how would people go about making the game experience different every time? Does it really come down to like how terrain is used, how the models are used?
Yeah, both of those things. And I mean, that's how, I mean, when I start coming out with campaign supplements and releasing scenarios, that's probably a lot of the main structure will be about how the terrain is set up, where the relic is hidden, how you get the relic, how many relics there are, and other types of objectives that are on the board. But man, like terrain can really mess with stuff. Making the relic harder to get to really changes the dynamic. Because you only have a few characters, if you don't have open spaces for everyone to just go and fight a fair fight, Like, yeah, think D&D. Like, man, one awesome Viking standing in a doorway and waiting for characters to come in one at a time is going to be way stronger than one Viking against 10 orcs. So
Right. Yeah, so with the pig warriors, from what you were saying, they activate a little bit more like your typical unit.
yeah,
Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I kind of gathered where you're going with the heroes, because that makes sense. Thinking of it as more of like the D&D term and kind of like what they did with chainmail. I get that, but you were saying that the pigs in particular activate more like your typical war.
Yeah, so part of that is the character classes for the pigs are based on what equipment they've been given. So a soldier pig runs around with a halberd, and that's going to be your highest value attack. But it's pretty difficult, so you got to get him in position. He's not going to really be charging with the halberd, but once he's in position, he can really crack armor and destroy guys. The shield pig is armed with a shield, naturally, and he's going to be able to take a tactic called shield wall, and that's where he can protect allies next to him.
Okay.
So if you get multiple shield pigs next to each other, all shield walling, then they get up to really high armor, and they'll be really defensive. And then, equally, you can have halberdiers behind them, right? So you can play them in formation, and they'll be way more viable and way stronger. And so as you work out those tactics and those kinds of synergies that are built into the faction, you'll hopefully be able to get an upper hand on characters that are naturally better. You know, a knight is naturally a better fighter than a pig that's been granted a sword by a Dark Lord.
Right. So what it comes down to is
a bunch of pigs working together is going to be able to do it.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess that was my next question. So what it comes down to is like just kind of like D&D again, bringing it up because it's the closest comparison.
Sure.
Like
and most people should have played D&D by now.
Yeah, so. I'd certainly hope so. But so your questing knight, for example, if we were to look at him as like a first level fighter, he's going to look at an orc and be like, hey, you know what? Fuck this guy, and he's just going to kill it. Like, and it's going to be the same thing in your game, where if the questing knight runs up on a typical soldier pig just one-on-one, the questing knight's just going to cut him in half.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, it's not guaranteed, but the knight has castle-forged weapons, castle-forged armor, martial training, where he's mostly going to tear up a pig. But a pig can also charge farther than him and hit him really hard with his tusk and rip off his face with a lucky hit. So, like, you shouldn't treat pigs lightly, but it is balanced more where two pigs is going to be balanced against one knight.
Okay.
So, and then on top of that, the way the pigs use their or support one another is going to make them even more viable against the knight. So, yeah, the like intro game, there's a especially for any listeners that are interested in about the game mechanics, on RelicBlade.com you can get a quick start guide, and the quick start guide is an encounter between one knight and two pigs, and it's a shield pig and a soldier pig with a halberd. So you'll really get a good idea of that. And I play that game a lot. You know, it's a really good intro demo game when I'm showing people the game mechanics. And I've seen it go so many different ways. Like I've seen it go, yeah, it's a great fight, even though you're only using 3 models.
So it really helps show off all the mechanics of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you were saying that with the different ways that you can outfit models. So do you have like I saw that you have like a deck of cards that goes with it. So
yeah.
Do you have like a certain limit of cards that you can use when you're designing your force? Or do you just
to a degree. Each character has an inventory, and that inventory has a selection of icons. And so you can take the different upgrade types are a tactic, a weapon, a potion, an item, and a prepared spell.
Okay.
So the knight, for example, can take tactics and weapons, an item, 2 potions, I think is his limit. So that means that as you're working through your point value, you can choose what upgrades you'll want to take for him. But the thing is, with only 100 points to choose from, you really have to choose whether that magic weapon that costs 4 points is really the right choice.
Right.
It's probably the right choice. It's a magic sword, but I mean, if you don't have 4 points to spend on it, it's like a slight skew in stats. So there might be better ways to spend your points.
Right. So okay. So that, I guess that answers the question that I had next on that. Then, so everything in the game, you're not getting just like freebie upgrades. Everything costs points towards your 100 points.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
The only card that is different than costing points is you can take a weapon away from a pig and give him a stick, and that'll make him cheaper.
All right, so just pigs run around with sticks.
But that's a nice way to, like, with the shield pig, it's a nice way to take away his weapon, give him a cheap weapon, and then you get basically a free tactic with that. Because it's a -2 points for the giving him a cudgel instead of his sword, and then the shield wall tactic costs 2 points. So you can get, like, free shield wall if you take away his sword.
Okay, excellent. So even with your typical pig soldiers, there's some customization there to, say, okay, my shield wall pig is going to be slightly different. So they're still having that RPG feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the thing, like, I think when people first hear about the game, they either think of it as Hero Quest, and they're like, well, are you going to do, like, full scenarios and dungeon crawling? Is it a dungeon crawling game? It's like, well, no, it's not really a dungeon crawling game. And then, or they'll hear about it and say, well, like, who would want to play as the dungeon? Like, no one wants to be the dungeon. Everyone wants to be heroes. But once I sit down with people, they almost always choose to play as an army of pigs. Like, or depending on the person's personality, but playing as the pigs is a ton of fun. Like, they're so crazy, and they've got, like, lots of great options. And, like, you can choose health potions or hand grenade potions that explode in fire, and, like, that's a ton of fun. You definitely aren't drawing the short stick if you choose to play as the monsters.
Awesome. So I got to ask you this, just because of the fact that you've got pigs in the game that can take fire bombs. Can they drop it on themselves and turn themselves into bacon?
Well, like, strictly speaking, I don't know if you can target yourself, but you could definitely hit someone that's standing close enough to you that you will catch on fire. And right, you can also accidentally drop it and catch yourself on fire if you roll a 1. So
I'm just saying, I think that should be a rule, just straight up bacon.
Strictly speaking, like, bacon upgrade. They do eat each other if it comes to it, so you gotta watch out.
There you go. You're just helping the process.
Yeah.
Adding some flavor. Nice. So how many models do you have right now total available? Since this is a solo project, I mean, I can't imagine that you've been, like, sculpting 40 models for this thing.
Right. Right now, the core game comes with 11 figures.
Okay.
With the Kickstarter, I was able to add 2 more figures to the core game. So right now it's at 13, I guess.
Nice.
There are 4 hero classes. The cleric has a spirit weapon that comes with her, and that's modeled. It's a miniature that comes with her. And the druid can transform into a cave bear, and so she has a large cave bear miniature that comes with her.
Okay.
And then the pigs, there are 3 different body types, and then just a slew of weapon options. So you kind of choose your pose and then equip them according to what card or character class you want them to be.
Nice. Now, are they resin or metal?
Metal, white metal, yeah.
Okay, cool.
A good old-fashioned metal miniatures.
Nice. So with the pigs, they can, everybody out there, they try stretching the hobby a little bit more. So with the pigs, it should be fairly easy to magnetize them if you wanted to swap weapons between games and all that. Cool.
Yeah. They have a hole that actually fits a specific size magnet in their wrist, so it should be really a pretty quick swap if you're used to magnets. I personally am not crazy about magnets. You guys should just buy like 30 pigs. It'll be fine. So.
That's what everybody.
Yeah. Forget magnets. Support a local, support independent artists.
Yeah, even though he specifically put magnet holes in the wrist, but we didn't hear that part of the debate.
Yeah. Even though I love you guys, and I'll put magnet holes in the wrist.
Awesome. So it sounds like I mean, I'm impressed by the fact that you have taken this project 100% on yourself with the sculpting, the illustration, the rules. You've kind of said, screw it, I don't need a team, I'm going to do this my damn self. And
well, I mean, I appreciate the compliment, but it's not that I wouldn't work with a team or don't like working with a team. Like, I love a team, but I needed to do this game full time. Like, it's not going to happen on weekends. Like, that's a hard truth. You've got to quit a job and take the insane risk of trying to make a game. And I spent a long time trying to convince my friends to jump in with me, but they had jobs. They needed, they need health insurance. So I ended up having to do it on my own. But the thing is that I love everything about the game because I got to make it exactly to my taste, and you end up with an unfiltered game where there wasn't an art director or like an intellectual properties manager that was coming in and saying like, oh, hey, you can't do that, or oh no, like no one's going to want to buy a dragon cleric. Make it more of like a traditional priest-looking character. Like no one was telling me that, so I got to just follow my dreams and hopes and follow my heart, and it made a game that is distinctly Sean Sutter flavor. Like you don't have to buy a game that is a Games Workshop game or a Privateer Press game where it has like a strict flavor that it has to be. So right. I mean, I want friends, I want coworkers, I would love that. But I do, like, it's crazy to make your own game. And so I had to do it on my own if it was going to happen.
Oh yeah, I totally understand it. I mean, that right there, just knowing from my background what it takes to do everything that you've done, yeah, you would have to quit a full-time job and just focus on nothing but that to make it happen. So yeah. That's a pretty ballsy move. I mean, yeah. Especially with the way that miniatures are nowadays. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed it, and I know I've talked about it numerous times off podcast. I may have mentioned it a few times on here. But like game stores, especially nowadays, unless they know of your product and have had people asking them for your product, it's a struggle in miniatures nowadays. Yeah. We're in a culture of like everybody wants it right now. That's the reason why, if X-Wing didn't have Star Wars behind it, would it sell?
No,
I don't think nearly as well.
That's the thing. Like X-Wing is an extremely fun game. But it's also true that it rests on the fact that it's Star Wars in a lot of ways. Because, like, who can wait to only get like 2 new ships a year or something? Like, right. Like the release schedule is crazy. I mean, I appreciate it, but
yeah, but especially with X-Wing, the reason why it took off so quick as quick as it did is because of the fact that you buy the starter set and you open the box and you're playing. There's no painting, there's no assembling, you might have, the only assembling, if you want to call it that, is figuring out what ships you're going to put in for points and pilots and co-pilots, and past that you're good to go. It's not your traditional.
And I mean,
full hobby.
Like I'd be lying if I said that X-Wing didn't influence my game structure, because, like, I mean, man, I think it's so great that someone can own 3 X-Wings and play with their friends and never need to buy more. And I know that you're going to want to buy more. And so right. I think Games Workshop has been, like, so interested in making sure you have to buy 3 boxes, 4 boxes of Spearmen to make a unit of real Spearmen. And that you're going to be $2,000 in before you're even playing an actual game of Warhammer. But X-Wing didn't start that way. They were like, for $25 if you buy it on Amazon, you have a 2-player game that you're going to be able to play for a week and have a ton of fun with. And I know that you're going to come back and buy a B-Wing. Like, yeah, you're going to come back. And on top of that, people, even though the game is technically extremely cheap compared to Warhammer, people just buy a ton of everything. And so I kind of thought, like, man, if I'm a one-man studio and I can only make so many models, I can only afford to produce so many models, uh, I should make a game like that where people are playing and having fun right out of the box, and then I trust that I made a game good enough that when I come out with a new character, they're gonna want it, and they're gonna want it, right away. They're gonna want it, and so I really think I made that where you have enough models for your whole party of heroes right out of the box, but man, when I come out with a new ranger, you're gonna want it because it's good and it's a ton of fun, and I can trust you that you're gonna believe in the game and be excited about a new character. So,
All
Nick,
right,
can you hear
there it
me?
is.
I can hear you.
All right.
Sorry, there's been some odd issues all night with me, though.
Oh yeah, sorry, buddy.
Well, it sucks to be you then. I don't know what you want me to say. No, that's fine. We can edit this shit, no big deal. I don't care. So, anyways, yeah, as you were saying, like you want to make sure that people are having fun with your stuff, and when you just
Yeah.
Apparently he decided to go away again.
I don't know if it was his choice. I think he got dragged away by the internet.
Yeah. So I've seen the Ashes Let's Play and
Oh yeah, good.
and all that, and I've actually backed, and I'm a little stoked. I'm wishing your Kickstarter would end sooner so that you'd send me stuff.
I know that's the problem. And it's really because we're gonna have an awesome party at a brewery. Like that's the behind the scenes truth is that if you were local to Sacramento, you get to come out and play RelicBlade and drink branded beer. So.
Well, damn it! I think you should still send me my stuff soon.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to being able to order that stuff and get it out. Because I want to add tokens because tokens are like a key part to the game. But it's definitely gonna like delay shipping a little bit. Not beyond the date I set, but like ordering stuff from China is always a little bit iffy.
Right. So is that where you're getting everything produced? Is in China?
No, only that one component. Everything else is in the USA.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're actually having tokens made.
It would. I want to make a what's it called? You know, the cardboard stuff that you get in board games that you pop out.
Right.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a set of that so that it'll fit right into the game box, and then you can pop it out and pop out a measuring gauge, so you can have like a good measuring device right out of the box.
Okay.
And then all of the tokens you need.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Because that way, I mean,
you mentioned some of those things in your update the other day.
Yeah. And it's been part of my like dream for it for a while, but sourcing that stuff and having to go to China had me on the fence on whether I wanted to do it. And I mean, it's $1,000 that maybe I don't have to spend, but at this point, I'm sure it will be good.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like about X-Wing is that it comes with really more than you need for the game.
Tons of
and even Infinity comes with a bunch of stuff, right there for you to use.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it. Like, RelicBlade is so friendly to players that are new to tabletop games that I end up selling the game to people that don't even own dice. So, a game that's appealing to people that don't have dice and don't have good, like, measuring stuff for tabletop games, I should include those components. And I think it'll be really good. Yeah.
Yeah, if and that makes the difference because if it's a full game in a box, then you're going to be a whole lot better off.
Yeah.
Just as a consumer, I know me and some of the people I know in Florida when when I'm back that way because I recently moved here to Georgia. But we used to get together on Saturday nights and whatnot, and we'd play different games. And X-Wing was a popular one that we'd play because it was just it's a game in a box. Granted, I've bought plenty of X-Wing stuff, but you don't.
But it's also, that game has a lot going for it. But that's part of it. I want people to be able to buy the game and only need super glue and a knife.
Is. You can also look at some of the other games that are coming out, Turtles and The Walking Dead, which are entire games in a box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's part of it. If I were going to compare my product to Super Dungeon Explorer, you don't get as much as you would get with that. You don't get 1,000 miniatures and 1,000 tokens and 1,000 cards. I can't afford to make that. But RelicBlade is specifically an old-fashioned miniatures game where you're getting white metal models, and the hobby is painting, the hobby is making terrain, the fun is playing with your friends. And so I think that's a different dynamic with those big box games where you get it, and yeah, sure, you could paint your Super Dungeon Explorer stuff, but why would you? Because there's a million parts. So I definitely want RelicBlade to be a miniatures game, but I also want it to be friendly enough that anyone can grab it and start playing it. So.
And unfortunately, our podcast was cut short. We ended up losing internet connection over here in the Woodstock, Georgia area. Thanks for that, Comcast, you bunch of pricks. But anyway, Sean was a fantastic guy to talk to. We definitely look forward to having him on the show at a later date. So again, you can still check out his Kickstarter. As of today, it is March 10th. It's still got 9 days to go. It's already funded. It's going strong. Definitely go on Kickstarter, check it out. All you got to do is go into Kickstarter and type in RelicBlade. It is located on there under the title RelicBlade Adventure Battle Game. Check it out there. I believe he's got the rules up there to download. If not, just listen to the damn episode. I know he mentioned it at one point. And yeah, unfortunately, sometimes shit like this happens. So stay tuned for the next episode. And again, thanks for listening.